Hello, you are listening to the Wellness Project powered by Spotlight Coalition. I'm your host, Des, and this is episode number 97. If you enjoyed last week's episode about minimalism, then you are in for quite a treat today. I am interviewing Krista Lockwood from Motherhood Simplified. Krista helps people to declutter their homes without becoming a full-blown minimalist. She helps them so that they can have enough stuff, but without constantly feeling overwhelmed by the things that they have in their home. Krista and I are going to discuss clutter, the difference between decluttering and minimalism, and how clutter in your home can actually affect your mental health and well-being. Decluttering and the idea of minimalism is something that I'm very interested in. It's something that I struggle with, but it is something that I want to get better at. And I think it is a skill that we learn and a habit and mindset to get into. So I'm really looking forward to speaking with Krista about this because it's something that I want to learn more about. Help me welcome Krista Lockwood. All right, everyone. I am here with Krista Lockwood, and today we are discussing decluttering and the effects that clutter have on your mental health and your emotional well-being. Krista, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this and hopefully help your people out.
Oh, definitely. And this is a topic I've really been wanting to cover because I myself feel the effects that clutter have on my life and my emotions and my mental health. So let's get started. And can you introduce everybody to who you are, your story, how you realized that clutter was impacting your mental and emotional well-being?
Yeah, so I am currently a mom of five and I run and founded Motherhood Simplified, where I teach other moms and people how to declutter their homes. And I feel like it's kind of a thing that people are becoming more aware of. And I accidentally fell into it back in 2013 when my husband and we had three kids at the time, and we decided that we were going to move from Alaska to Florida. We did it in about a month's time. And we were young parents and really broke. And it actually was more affordable to just bring a suitcase of our stuff. We brought a suitcase of toys and a suitcase of clothes per kid and started over in Florida, because Alaska to Florida is like the furthest points you can possibly go. I didn't realize that when we got to Florida, my life was going to get a whole lot easier. And on paper, it really shouldn't have, because, I was leaving the only place I'd ever called home. I was leaving my entire support system. We had culture shock, honestly, because Alaska to Florida is completely different. We were both entrepreneurs, like trying to get established. Like, there's no reason that I should have felt, especially my motherhood, like things were easier, but they did. And I remember really clearly, like about 2 weeks after we had been there, like sitting in my house and being like, there's like nothing to do, and actually being able to like hear my thoughts. And my dad called me one day and was like, "How are you doing?" And I just started breaking down crying. And I was like, I feel great. Like, I love it here. But I realized that I felt like really disconnected from my kids and really disconnected from my spouse. And like all of the dishes are done and the laundry's caught up on. And my husband is still annoying me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I truly believe in hindsight that it's because I didn't have those messes in my house anymore, like the never ending laundry piles, the never ending dishes, the piles of stuff around my house that were just like these constant to-dos distracting me. I got space to really process my emotions and focus on healing the things that I needed healed. We moved, we had that experience, lived that way for about 4 years, and then I got pregnant again. And I joined a due date group, which is a thing on Facebook where everybody's due like within the same month of each other. And I met some really great friends. We got to know each other. And after we had our babies, everyone started sharing, like, are you feeling, the overwhelm in your home? Like, do you have these never ending messes too? Like laundry piles on your couch or on your bed, or just like piles of stuff on your kitchen counters and stuff everywhere that you just can't keep up on, no matter like what kind of chore charts you try or cleaning routines. You just can't keep up. And we decided to do this thing called house tours, where we all would go live and show each other the insides of our houses. And when it got to be my turn, all of my friends were like, Krista, we agreed that we would just show each other our houses. We wouldn't clean up before. Like, how do you have a clean house and a baby? and 3 other kids. And it was from that experience and watching my friends struggle with these things that I used to struggle with that I started to piece it together of like, oh, like life got a lot easier for me when my house and the amount of stuff in it was reduced. It gave me more time and it gave me more energy. And I started piecing it together that way. And I just asked them, like, do you want me to show you how to have less stuff? Like, you don't actually need all of those baby toys. You don't actually need all of those clothes. You don't actually need all of this stuff in your house. Yes, you need some of it. And I can show you how to find the balance of, having enough, but not too much. And they said, yes, please show us how. And now we're here. And that's what I do. And so I've seen this happen for, thousands of moms where they declutter their homes and they essentially what they're doing is reducing the workload inside of the home. And that gives them more time and more energy to actually do the things that they want and need to do.
Oh, this is great. And I love that you brought up that the never ending cycle of the dishes and the laundry and everything. They're a distraction. And I feel like a lot of people feel this way, especially in the creative communities. I've seen memes that, I can't get started until all the dishes are cleaned and I focus on cleaning the house and then my work, my art, whatever it is, gets pushed to the back burner. So I think this is a big issue that a lot of people are feeling. And I think you're right. A lot of people are coming to that realization that the clutter is affecting our lives, it is affecting our mental health, and we just have so much stuff. And it just astounds me that we go into the store, whether it's, the grocery store, Walmart, Target, whatever it is, and there's just endless amounts of clothes, endless amounts of stuff. And why do we need all of this stuff? It's very overwhelming.
Yeah, what you touched on with that is that I feel like a lot of times we think we need all of this stuff because we are so used to being surrounded by so much. One really good example of this that most of us can relate to because we went through 2020 is like being used to having toilet paper on demand. And all of a sudden, when there was less, we all freaked out, right? It really
Yes.
freaked us out because we're used to it being there all of the time. And just because we're used to it being there all of the time doesn't mean that it has to be there or that it's even serving us, right? Obviously, we need toilet paper, but there was a lot of people out there that were like, well, we're going to find some different ways, right? Whatever you want to do. But the same is true in our homes. So when we're used to having, walking into a closet full of clothes, yet still not having anything to wear, in our minds, it's kind of the same process where if we think that there's less in there, we're going to have less to wear. But if you can kind of take a step back and separate your feelings between like, the facts of like, I'm not even wearing most of these clothes anyway. And if I got rid of the clothes that I'm not wearing anyway, what is actually going to happen? Like, I'm still going to be wearing the same things on repeat. If there's ever a truly urgent need where I like need some piece of clothing, like clothes are everywhere, I could totally get it. But that kind of helps us understand the difference between like, what do we actually really need? What's serving us and what can we let go of to give ourselves space? Because how would it feel to walk into a closet where you wore most of the stuff in there and you could find it when you needed it and it wasn't wrinkled or ruined or forgotten about? Like that would feel pretty great, I think, for most people.
Oh, yeah, it would feel so good. I mean, I have a dresser just full of clothes that I don't wear, and I wear the same thing pretty much every day. Actually, I work in a middle school and high school, and one of my kids came up to me one day and said, "Miss, why do you wear the same thing every day?" And I said, "Well, because I'm lazy in the morning and I just throw on whatever's comfortable, and it happens to be the same pair of jeans." And, you know, so
Yeah.
I have all these clothes that I don't wear, which is, it is overwhelming going through all this stuff and realizing I don't wear any of this, but for some reason I have this block that I can't get rid of it, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later. In what ways did the clutter actually affect your mental health? And then how did decluttering actually improve your mental health?
Yeah, great question. So I think the biggest way that it affected me was just this constant feeling of being behind. I would go to work, do all the things that I had to do at work, and then I would come home and it would feel like I had to do more work and I was always behind. I told myself a story, many stories about myself that I think we all do of like, I must be lazy or I must be too unorganized or I must just be, the type of person who's just naturally messy and this is how I'm going to be. Those are some of the more obvious stories that I told myself about it. But then I was also making it mean things about who I was as a mother, because I would be so distracted and so, frantic and stressed out about trying to get caught up at home that I wasn't able to really be present with my kids. And so then, those are where the harder messages started to come in, or the harder stories started to come in, where, I'm telling myself, like, maybe I'm not really a great mom, right? Maybe my kids don't know that I love them. Those are the ones that really hurt. So I think the biggest thing, though, is that all of that pointless stuff, it overloads our senses. It gives a sensory overload. It's overstimulating, but also it creates these never ending to-do lists in our head, and we make it mean something about us. I think that's the biggest way that it impacted me. And then when I decluttered, I was able to get relief from that overstimulation, that sensory overload. I remember the first month that we were there, every weekend we were like going to the beach, like all day, Saturday and Sunday, spending it at the beach. And I would come home and we were still caught up and I could still like relax with my kids. That was a beautiful thing. And I remember thinking to myself, like, when is this going to end? Like, this is not how we live our life. But I was loving, the freed up time and energy with my family. And because I had that freed up time and energy to actually go do things with them, to actually hang out at our house and have our house feel like a place where I could relax, I was able to begin to untangle deeper root issues that I actually had, because we all have our childhood stories. We all have the way that we were raised. We all have our core woundings. And I was able to actually begin to untangle those, like, why do I still feel disconnected from my kids, even though we are spending more time together, and kind of untangling like the relationship with my parents. And then I was able to do the same thing, like with my relationship with my husband, of like, okay, he does help with the dishes and he does help with the laundry and the kids, and he always has, but we're still having, a breakdown in our communication. Why is that happening and how can we fix it? And so it gave me not only like an immediate relief from those daily burdens, but it also gave me the space and the bandwidth to dive deeper into those bigger issues that I knew I needed to address, but I didn't know how. Addressing those kinds of things are not easy. It's not like you can just say, "Oh, I'm going to figure out why I am projecting my issues with the way I grew up onto my husband," right? Like, you can't just do that. It takes time. But I was able to get bandwidth to actually do those things.
Okay, great. Something you said really resonated with me, that you would get home from working your full-time job and then you feel like you're coming home to another full-time job. I feel that exact way all the time. I just feel like taking care of the house in itself is a full-time job. Like you said, like the cooking, all the dishes, all the laundry, it's just this never-ending to-do list. And it does at a point feel like, I can't keep up. What is wrong with me? Like you said, you kind of put that into your own personality, like it's a personality flaw or a character flaw or something like that. So I like that you brought that up. So I'm really excited to get into this. So what do you think is the difference between minimalism and decluttering? Because they're separate, right? They're different, and there is also a minimalist movement going on right now as well.
I mostly think that it's semantics. It doesn't really matter what you want to call it. However, I do like distinguishing and kind of labeling things as minimalist versus decluttering or simplicity. I like the word simplicity. I don't know why I've loved it ever since I was a kid. But minimalism to me, or the thing that a lot of people jump onto when they're seeking relief, can quickly turn into just another form of overwhelm or burden. And I've seen this happen before for moms and people in general. They're overwhelmed in their lives. They know that they need less stuff, and they're kind of like on this upswing of a pendulum way up high. And then the natural thing to happen is that they swing too far in the other direction, to where they're obsessing about how many items of clothing they have, what kinds of things a minimalist would buy or not buy, especially when it comes to parenting or people who want to be a part of like an eco-friendly movement. They'll be like, well, if I want to fit into the minimalism or minimalist category, I can only buy these kinds of toys, or I can only buy these kinds of clothes, or I can only buy from these kinds of businesses, right? And that's not helpful either, because the reality is that a lot of, especially like eco-friendly living or minimalist trends or ideals, are not necessarily accessible or even practical for everybody, especially people with kids, right? Like I can't afford to buy 5 kids, these sustainable clothes from these online boutiques as much as I would love to. It's just not reality for me. So what can I do instead? I can buy less overall. There's so many different things to do. And that's where I think simplicity comes in and is more helpful than something like, minimalism, where it's like these really strict and rigid rules and guidelines that you're trying to follow that really aren't serving you and can become another obsession. And to me, the whole point is to learn how to declutter and have enough stuff to not only meet your needs, right? Because some people will take it that far too, of like only have what you need. But we are humans and we live in a great time where we have access to so many things that bring us joy and are beautiful and bring us pleasure. But the point is to have enough stuff to meet your needs and your desires in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming to you and isn't forcing you to live outside of your means. I think that's how I would define it: minimalism versus simplicity and decluttering. Make your life
Okay.
easier.
Okay, great. No, I love that. That's a great way to explain it. And so when it comes to decluttering, I know there's a lot of resistance. We get very attached to our stuff. We have those thoughts, well, I might need this in the future. And even those clothes we never wear, well, I might wear this one day. Why do you think it's so difficult for us to declutter?
There's a few different reasons. And I think for each person, it's going to be different. You'll probably have one that is stronger for you and you might resonate with all of them. But for some of us, the reason that we hold on to things for what if we need it or just in case is because maybe we grew up in a family or, a childhood where we didn't always have what we needed. And so we hold on to our things to give us that security. Or it could be, and usually it's a combination, but it could also be maybe you grew up in a family where people showed their love for you by giving you things. And so you don't want to get rid of it because it might make that person feel bad, or it might, on some conscious or subconscious level, feel like you are throwing away their love and generosity for you. And therefore, you don't actually care for it, which is not true. Some of us are resistant to decluttering because it feels wasteful and we don't want to contribute to landfills, or we feel guilty because we bought all this stuff that we don't use and can't even fit into our houses and we wasted our money. There's just so many reasons. Maybe it's because we are a deeply sentimental person. And so when we look at items, we remember the story behind it or the memory within it. And getting rid of the thing makes us feel like we're getting rid of the memory. There are so many reasons. Did any of those stand out to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of them. So
Yeah.
when it comes to those reasons, especially a lot of people feel that attachment to the objects, the sentimental attachment. This person gave this gift to me, I can't get rid of it kind of thing. What are your suggestions? Do you have any tips for kind of shifting that mindset or getting past that block?
Yes. So, what I've seen for the people who fall into this category is that it's usually, again, it's like one of these, it's probably one of the main reasons, but it might be a combination of both. For some of us, we might see, like a gift that somebody gave us. We can talk about like a wedding gift. Maybe somebody gave us a really nice kitchen appliance or a really nice set of dishes, and we see that and we're like, oh my gosh, I know they spent a lot of money on this. They gave it to us as a wedding gift. So amazing. The reality is, I don't use it. I don't really have room for it. And I feel bad letting it go. And so we hold on to things for guilt, right? We feel
Mhm.
bad because we don't want them to feel like we don't care about what they gave us. But what I've seen is that both in my experience in giving people things now, especially, and receiving things, is that when somebody is giving you something, they're doing it because they care about you. They want to show you, like, it's an expression of love. It's a physical manifestation of their love. They're not giving you the thing because they expect you to keep it forever. They're giving you the thing because they wanted to show you, I care about you. I love you. I want to give you something to show you that. The gift really is in the giving, not in the keeping forever. If they are giving you something with the expectation that you keep it in your home forever, that's a boundary issue, because that's not a healthy boundary. And I think that we can see that, on the way that we give things to other people, right? When we give somebody a gift, are we expecting them to keep it forever? I don't think so. I don't think that's a healthy way to give. We're giving it to them because we thought of them and we wanted them to feel loved. And things really aren't meant to be kept forever. And just because you choose to get rid of something doesn't mean you are dismissing that person, doesn't mean you are going to forget the memory. There are a lot of really great ways to commemorate things, take a photo of it or, send them a really heartfelt thank you and then get rid of the thing. So yeah, I think it's usually guilt, but it can also be a form of grief, right? Like if you have an item and you're grieving either the loss of a person or maybe you're grieving the end of a season of life for you, that can happen a lot with clothes. We change careers or maybe we graduate from college and now we have professional jobs and we have to like get rid of our party clothes because we just don't use them anymore. And so it could be holding on to it because you're grieving, the end of a season of your life. And that doesn't mean that you didn't enjoy that season of life. It doesn't mean that, you're forgetting the person. It just means that we are meant to evolve. We aren't meant to keep things forever. It's totally okay to just keep the things that fit into your life right now.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing all of those suggestions. I think those are really great tips and really great ways for us to start to shift our mindset in a way because I know I struggle with a lot of those, especially the sentimental one. I still have things that my grandparents have given me and, they've passed away. So I'm like, I can't get rid of this. So I really like those tips, especially taking photos of things. I think that's great. I like that you said too, grieving that, letting go that season of life. I know a lot of people feel that way, especially I know moms that, have kids now and, get rid of those old clothes and just, yeah, there's a lot of different reasons, right? But I think you touched on a lot of them that a lot of us will resonate with. So, as
Yeah.
for the process of decluttering, can you walk us through your tips on how to start decluttering, the process, just giving some helpful tips on how to get started?
Yes. And since I know you are one of the sentimental ones, I
Yes.
can kind of tie it into this too. But I always recommend starting with something just so simple, like under your bathroom sink or a spice cabinet or maybe a laundry room cabinet, because in those spaces, there generally is not a lot of sentimental items. In fact, when we go into those spaces, what we find is a lot of like trash or a lot of duplicate products, a lot of things that are expired, like lotions that we buy and never use, or soaps or cleaners, or in spices, spices that we don't actually ever use. Or for me, for some reason, my family, we always accumulate a lot of cinnamons. So there will be like 3 open things of cinnamon that I can just consolidate and put together. What happens when you start with something really simple like that, that's not emotionally charged, is that you get practice in the skill of decluttering, because decluttering really is a skill. You feel relief because you're like, wow, it looks so nice in here. Even if it's just under your bathroom sink or just a laundry room cabinet, you're like, this feels really nice. Like, I'm excited to do laundry now because it's so nice in here. That helps you get a quick win and see that it works and see that it's really not that bad or that scary. And it builds momentum. And when you're doing in tiny spaces like, a cabinet here and there, it's easy to let that trickle on into other spaces and do another cabinet and then another cabinet or another counter space, or move into your closet and start making decisions on those things that are a little bit more emotionally charged. And the reason that I wanted to share that with you is because when you can do that, you create space for those things in your life that are really sentimental, which I think is the whole point of a sentimental item. Is you want to keep it around in a way that can honor your story, honor your history, honor your memories, honor the people who you want to honor. Clearing out space of this pointless stuff within your home makes it a lot easier to do that, because I have a few things from like my kids' childhood, but also from my grandparents as well. My grandma made this beautiful quilt that her and my grandpa used for like 50 years that I have at my house now. I like to create space for that so that it can just be a part of our everyday life rather than something that's like buried in a closet, which is how I used to have things for, that were special to me.
Oh, I love all of that. Krista, this has been so amazing. And I really resonated with so much of this. And this is something that I constantly struggle with. So I know our listeners as well probably feel the same. I think this has been so helpful. Do you have any last parting words of wisdom or advice or tips that you can give our listeners today?
Yeah, I mean, start small and know that it happens over time. It took you a long time to accumulate all of your stuff. And so it's going to take you a little bit of time to get rid of it. And that's okay. It happens in bite sized pieces that build on themselves, and you can totally do it.
Awesome. And one last question before I have you tell everyone where to find you. Do you have any tips on what to do with all the stuff that you've decided to declutter, like different ways that people could get rid of all the stuff?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, similar to the way that I recommend starting in some more simple and small, like a spice cabinet or under your sink, is because I think that when you're starting out, you should get rid of things in the easiest way possible. And generally, those things are things that can be trashed, which is the easiest way to get rid of things. But of course, you don't want to just trash everything. And so, getting rid of those things first that can just go into the trash or into the recycling, and then move on to things that you can donate. There's lots of different ways to donate. But again, I recommend donating in whatever the easiest way possible is for you. For some people, you'll just have to look, Google and see if you have these kinds of services in your area. But you can schedule donation pickups and you can set the date so that kind of like, here's a guide of when I need to have stuff out on my porch to be donated. You can drop things off at donation centers. Those I find are the next easiest way to get rid of your clutter other than trashing or recycling it. And then the next way that takes a little bit more of your time and energy is to go directly to the source. That could be a buy nothing group, depends on if you have that in your area and how active it is, which is, donating directly to people within your community. It could be researching a local charity that you want to donate to. Maybe it's a women's shelter or, a nonprofit organization like Head Start or Early Head Start, which serves underprivileged families who are experiencing like economic strain. So you can find those kinds of places to donate. But I still think, starting the process and doing whatever is easiest for you, because as you start doing it that way, you open up more time and energy for yourself to donate things in a more meaningful and direct way. It's totally okay to just do it however you need to get it done in the beginning so that you can get to that point where you can declutter in those bigger ways long term, which is what I love to do now, is finding families who I can give like my kids stuff to directly rather than just a donation center. But I also know that in certain seasons of my life when I was overwhelmed, the donation centers are what I needed to utilize just because that's the bandwidth that I have. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, definitely. That was super, super helpful. Yeah, thank you for that because I have a pile of stuff I want to get rid of, but I want to sell it. And it's just been sitting there for months because it does take that
Mhm.
energy, it does take that time. And I just haven't wanted to deal with it. So now I have a pile in my kitchen of things that I want to sell. So now I have
Oh,
clutter of my declutter. So
yeah. I was like, I know I'm missing one. I
oh
know there's one
yes.
and it's selling, but there's different variations of how you can sell things. You can Google in your area as well. There are consignment stores for clothing, and an upcoming trend are consignment stores for like home appliances and home decor, where it's not just a thrift store, but you can actually take your stuff and they'll sell it for you. And then, of course, if you want to take the time to put on like a marketplace type thing or on your personal page, I found people have a lot of success with that. If you just put it like on your personal Facebook page of like, I'm selling my stuff, please buy my stuff. People are more likely to buy it from you now that way than on something like marketplace where there's like an influx of scammers and all of these things. So yeah, maybe you might have a good consignment store in your area, not just for clothing, but like home appliances and decor too.
Yeah, absolutely. Krista, this has been so great, so helpful. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of your insight. Can you tell
Yeah,
everyone
thank
where
you
they
for having
can?
me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so great. Can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Motherhoodsimplified.com is where you can find everything, blogs, podcast episodes, free decluttering guides, decluttering courses, lots of great things on there that will help you get started and help you finish decluttering.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krista, for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Krista, thank you so much for being here today and speaking with us about decluttering. You really inspired me to want to declutter my home. And I have to be honest, after this interview, I watched the Minimalists Less Is Now documentary that I talk about in the last episode. So I actually had this interview with Krista, and then I watched the documentary, and I was so inspired. I was jumping out of my seat. I couldn't sit still, and I just went around my whole house decluttering everything. Krista really inspired me. I now have a huge pile of things to get rid of. So, between talking with her and watching the documentary, I was off to the races. I still have so much to do and so much to go through, but this was a great start, and I really loved all of Krista's actionable tips and how to take it slow and start simple. That was really helpful, and I really loved her mindset advice as well because I really struggle with those mindset blocks. Krista, thank you so much for being here. I hope that this episode inspired you as much as it inspired me. Thanks for being here today. I will see you next week with another amazing guest.